people farming oysters. You had transients coming in, sailors from all over the world. And it was just a great place to be, a lot of activity. So the Boat Basin was our magical village.
Every time I look at it, which I do from time to time, I get a little bit of tears in my eye, because it was just saying farewell to my home for 30 some odd years that I really, really enjoyed.
So it was very sad that we all had to leave, but we did cooperate, and later if I think back, we should have maybe fought back, because it was really unnecessary to move us out. There's no reason. It's still there. It's in fine shape, and you can just repair it and maintain it.
It's a destroyed community, and it's just, there's a diaspora of us all over the place. And
why did everybody have to leave 3 years ago when we could have been here? And I think that's very sad.
The 79th Street Boat Basin has been part of Riverside Park since the beginning of the modern park in the mid-1930s. If you go back even further, there was always recreational boating on the Hudson.
The Manitoba men, most of them from the town of Flin Flon, hold the lead. They nose into the 79th Street Boat Basin, the winners. A 470-mile journey ended.
I think for that small community that lived there full-time, it's been pretty traumatic. They've lost their home. And I think the community that they had built over the years, that's kind of been a diaspora. In November 2021, the Parks Department and the Economic Development Corporation, EDC, took a decision to ask all the boaters there to leave. And that was based on their view that it was not safe anymore to maintain the facility, that it wouldn't survive another winter. It had been so degraded by the elements, by Superstorm Sandy, and it was just no longer a viable place to have boats and people. In 2019, already, Parks Department was thinking about how they were going to rebuild the boat basin. It was obviously falling apart. The original design was for a one-story dockhouse. Then, because the state mandated that they cover a smaller space, they stacked the space up to 2 stories. The community didn't love the way it looked. Now they've negotiated with the state to bring it back down to 1 story.
I was the first Riverside Park administrator. I have to say it was everything from earnest families like Leslie to erstwhile playboys, like, I don't know, I won't name them all. And there was even an erstwhile pornographer. There were all kinds of people. And that some of them I would develop a trusting relationship with, and others would never believe me. There were some crazies.
I would describe the community that lived at the Boat Basin as very reflective of the Upper West Side in the 80s and 90s, which was a very mixed income community from a lot of different walks of life. It's probably a little bit more eccentric than the Upper West Side in general, but I feel like it was sort of a time capsule of what New York used to be.
As a captain, I was a captain, and really the only captain at the 79th Street Boat Basin. Originally went there because a friend told me about it way back in the mid-'80s, and I was enamored by how crazy it was. It was like the Wild West on the Upper West Side of Manhattan that nobody knew about.
Chris had a somewhat contentious, I was not sure how exactly contentious, relationship with the other residents. He was one of the few people there who actually knew boats very well, or he thought he knew boats better than everyone else. And he had an antique Trumpy, a 1911 Trumpy that he had restored, a showpiece, unlike most of the other boats, which were a lot more, I think, utilitarian.
Most of the people there were not boaters. They were just there because of cheap rent. None of them could run a boat. And they're just living in these trash cans that float. They all hated me because they knew that was my opinion. And I don't care, because I know what boating is. I've been across the seas, and I know what it's all about. And these people were they were like squatters.
We started living on the boat actually by accident. Of course, we used to live in the East Village, and where we had a sublet, and our landlord found out that we were living there under a sublet, but wasn't allowed, so we had to find a new home. And it was also the first time Kazumi and I were living together, and we saw a little ad in the Village Voice, which is a local newspaper back then, and it said, "Why not live on a boat?" with a phone number. So I called the number, and there was an old man answering the phone. He said, "Well, why don't you come by tomorrow at 8 o'clock? And then he said, "Don't contact me again." But I didn't know whether it was 8 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the evening. And we came in the evening at 8 o'clock, and there was nobody there. We looked in the window of a nice little houseboat, and then the old man came, and he said, "I guess you're the only applicant, so you got the boat." And it appeared that that morning there were 25 people all waiting for the old man, but he forgot the time as well as we misunderstood the time. So that's how we got to live there. I'm from the Netherlands, so I know how to sail. So we used to have a sailboat also at the boat base and on the mooring. And we would go out with friends, and we loved it from the beginning.
The boat basin completely changed my life. It's where I found the love of my life, my husband, where I raised a child, but also where I found my life's work. My name's Leslie Day, and I moved here in 1975 when I was 30 years old. So we lived here for 36 years. We had an organization called the Hudson Harbor Preservation Association, made up of boat owners, HHPA, to protect the boat basin. And we were leaving for work, and there were firemen there handing out notices that we would have to vacate. They were going to close the boat basin because they said it was a fire hazard. And that was the year our son was born, 1980. So we sued them, and we went to court, and the judge ruled, well, if it's a fire hazard, build another exit, Parks Department. And the judge ruled, New York is a hell of a town. Bronx is up, the Battery's down. It's known for its unique communities, and the boat basin is one of them, and it should be preserved. We won. But there were other times, Henry Stern, who was Parks Commissioner a couple of times, accused us of being squatters. It was a constant battle. I don't know if there'll ever be another liveaboard community. We had to fight all the time to keep it going. This Parks made the relationship quite adversarial. They were always trying to find reasons to close us down.
Thanks.
You're welcome. It needs soy. Want me to go get it?
All right. I was at the boat basin 52 years, and first 18 without Regina, but Regina and I did get married down at the boat basin's rotunda.
You live someplace for so long, you're comfortable in that spot. You're comfortable with what you have. We had everything.
Roll over. Good girl. Give her a treat.
I hope I get to go back to New York. Living there is very expensive in an apartment. And like I said, if I lived in an apartment, would I really be unhappy living in the apartment? But I miss my friends. I met friends there too, not just at the boat basin, but outside of the boat basin that I've known now for 25 years. I wish I could go back. I hope I can go back, but I'm not going to count on going back.
I'm Dick DiBartolo. I've been at the marina for more than 50 years. I have a lot of titles. Mad Magazine's Maddest Writer, every issue for more than 50 years. I had a 50-foot houseboat at one time. So we would have a 4th of July party, all the Mad Magazine New Year's Eve parties were here at the marina. It's just so totally different from when you walk through those gates. You walk through Riverside Park, and then 1 block away is all of New York City with the traffic and the crowds. But down at the marina, it was a place to really relax. The final day of the marina, Eddie and Reggie stayed to the very end. So I said to my spouse, Dennis, I said, let's go down and let's watch them. I almost tear up. Let's watch them leave. And to see the marina empty, it was very sad.
Water does weird things to people, and boats do weird things to people. There's a romance to it, and you fall in love with it. The boat basin will always be home. It felt a bit more secluded up there, a bit more like you've discovered a secret. When I first came into the city, I came here as an actor, and I was just wandering around, and I just wandered, as I tend to do, toward the water. I happened to be on the Upper West Side, and I remember I came down this, walked down this sort of sketchy-looking ramp. It was a dark tunnel, and then I came into what looked like a bar that was constructed just for me. Like, there was nobody else there. There was one guy eating a burger, one guy cleaning glasses, like perfect, like Western saloon movie. And I got a beer and I walked out, and there was this little marina there with boats of all shapes and sizes and colors and states of repair and disrepair. It was incredible. When I then got a job when I first moved to the city, that I realized it was in the same place. I was like, wow, the city that can be so harsh to newcomers, like, actually made some space for me. And that's kind of what the boat basin felt like to me.
A lot of people associate a marina and a boat basin with wealth and luxury yachts. And one thing that you hear a lot from people who are involved in the boat basin community and who use the facility was that this was not a rich person's paradise necessarily. And in fact, because it was a public facility, the cost of keeping a boat there was lower than it would have been at a private marina. And this made the water and boating accessible to people who otherwise wouldn't have been able to afford to access the water.
This was actually mostly developed as like a residential community, where it wasn't a community where people were necessarily had come from even like a boating background, and many of them didn't know anything about boats or boating. They ended up here because they liked it, and the cost of living was comparable or less than they were paying for other apartments in the area.
I miss the companionship. I really miss being on the Hudson River. Now that there's no boats, I come to the river at least 3 or 4 times a week. And I say, Hudson River, I don't have a boat, but I didn't just use you to ride on. I'm down here to say hello. There's something about water that is very relaxing.
We were the last boat also.
We were the last one to pull off, and I have video of it, and every time I look at it, which I do from time to time, I get a little bit of tears in my eye.
It really was a diaspora when we left. Some people went upriver, some people sold their boats, some people just put their boats up on land. They just spread out all over the place. So we've lost contact with some people, and we'll get back in contact before we all get back in.